We watched that Purdue-Tennessee game because of Zach Edey and Knecht.
Dalton, besides Bronny, was my favorite player in college basketball.
I watched Tennessee a lot. I did not think he was going to fall to us. I thought it would be impossible. I have no idea how that happened.
Okay, so that was LeBron James right there just singing the praises of one Dalton Knecht. We're going to talk about why those 16 other teams in the NBA decided to completely pass on Dalton Knecht. I still can't believe that is what happened in this year's NBA draft. I mean, Dalton Knecht through the first month and a half is actually shooting close to 43% from the three-point arc. The Los Angeles Lakers are finally giving Dalton Knecht some real minutes. And yeah, I know he's only averaging just under 12 points a game, but when you watch him play, you can see that Dalton Knecht at some point is the kind of player that could average 20 to 25 points a night in the NBA. We are going to talk about why those 16 teams actually made that horrific decision to not go ahead and draft Dalton Knecht. I know LeBron James certainly must have a magic 8-ball somewhere in his house. It often is wrong, but he got this one right. Welcome to the NBA Rundown. New to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe and, of course, like this video. Also, check out our big podcast version of the show on Spotify, Apple, or wherever the hell you might actually get your podcasts from. So we begin by taking a look at a very young Dalton Knecht. Now, he's in high school in this picture. I ask you, does this look like a legitimate National Basketball Association player sometime in the future? Dalton, when he was in high school, was 5'8" as a sophomore, grew to about 6'1", basically had no offers coming out of high school, so he decided to actually go to junior college. He actually went to Northeastern Junior College, where he played for 2 years. He basically had a very few offers from any D1 schools. After that, he ends up going to Northern Colorado, where in his first year in Northern Colorado, he averages just 8 points a game. In the next year, he actually averages over 20 points a game as a senior. So he did actually get to benefit from getting one more year of eligibility because of COVID. And based on that, he was actually recruited by some really big name schools, which actually includes Colorado, University of Oregon, University of Indiana, but he ultimately decides to go to Tennessee and play for Rick Barnes. Rick Barnes, who had been Kevin Durant's coach at one point, was the primary reason he went to Tennessee. Dalton, a huge fan of his idol, of course, in one Kevin Durant. So in his 1 year at Tennessee, Dalton Knecht actually became the SEC Player of the Year, unanimous Player of the Year, averaging 22 points a game. The team goes all the way to the Elite Eight in March Madness. They end up losing to Purdue, but Dalton actually scores 37 points in that game. So we end up in a world now where the NBA draft is right around the corner. Dalton, in his first month and a half in the NBA, is actually shooting north of 42% from the three-point arc at this point. And I think it's pretty clear to everybody that follows basketball that the Lakers have actually stolen Dalton Knecht at number 17. Now, from a statistical standpoint, that is a lie. And the reason that's a lie is since 2000, there have only been 8 players, 23 and older, that were actually drafted in the NBA. And of those 8 players, none of them have really done anything significantly outside of maybe Chris Duarte, who is now riding the bench in Chicago, basically on his way out of the NBA. Look, ultimately, it proves that the NBA scouts are correct in that they don't draft older players. That is simply what it comes down to. It is a ageism thing. If you are basically 21 years of age or older, you are most likely not going to be drafted into the NBA. And from a statistical standpoint, if you are drafted in the NBA, you probably won't succeed. It is shocking how bad the stats are for players like a Dalton Knecht in the association. Now, I will make the argument, after we watch this Brian Windhorst video, I will make the argument that exceptions matter, and this happens to be one of those exceptions. And I will also make the argument that those 16 teams that passed on him, including the team that could have taken him number one, are going to regret this for years to come. All right, to the Brian Windhorst video we go.
To get a rotation player out of this draft. I'm talking about a rotation player. Like, in all honesty, some of the guys at the top of this draft, you talk to their teams. I go, well, what do you think about X, who was taken in the top 10? They're like, we hope in like 2 or 3 years he can be like our number 3 or number 4. Like, that's what they say about guys who were taken at the top of the draft.
19-year-old French guys.
I'm not saying who it was.
Okay.
I'm not saying, I didn't say that, but people have said that to me. Right. Because, guys, they really didn't think this draft was very good. Like sort of, I'm not talking about draft analysts who have mock drafts. I'm talking about the guys I talk to who do this 365.
Why do you think, though, that a kid like Knecht, who we're already seeing...
I know why.
Is it... Okay, let me just ask a question before you tell me the answer.
Yeah.
It can't be because he's 23 years old.
Well, that's big reason.
Really?
Yeah, it really is.
Why? Why would you take a 19-year-old project rather than a 23-year-old guy who's ready to play?
Because in the NBA, you draft for the highest upside, especially in a draft where you're not sure. You draft for the highest upside because you're hoping that you can mold them into something.
Isn't that what they did last year with Jalen Hood-Schifino instead of going after Jaime Jaquez right afterwards?
Absolutely.
They did not want the older guy that was a senior.
So that was Brian Windhorst right there on ESPN LA talking about why ultimately Dalton Knecht went so late in the draft. It's pretty clear what the main reason was, and it was actually his age. Also, from a statistical standpoint, those players who have been 22 and older statistically just haven't proven to be really good upside picks for teams over the years. Remember, a lot of times in the National Basketball Association, a young player just simply needs 2 or 3 years to develop, and then they turn into potentially something bigger, which is really what, for the most part, the NBA draft is all about. It's seldomly about somebody making immediate impact, especially outside of the actual draft lottery. So for Dalton Knecht to actually play as well as he's played, he's already going, or if you will, bucking the trends that tell the NBA teams and NBA organizations and NBA scouts who to actually draft. Dalton Knecht, at this age of 23, is currently averaging just over 11 points a game. We know that his minutes have certainly gone up in the past couple weeks. We can see that head coach J.J. Redick has gained confidence in Dalton Knecht, who is now shooting, I should say, close to 43% from the three-point arc. Now, I always say this about NBA rookies, which is simply to say a lot of times they just need to get more playing time so they can actually feel comfortable in the association. Now, in this particular case, you're playing with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and so you only have so much time to actually prove you belong on the court with them. And I think over the course of this first month and a half of this particular NBA season, we've seen Dalton Knecht actually prove that he belongs on the court with, of course, Anthony Davis and LeBron James. So when I look at who could potentially be this year's NBA Rookie of the Year, I certainly think that Dalton Knecht will have a serious shot at actually winning that. I also think that NBA scouts and NBA teams are probably going to take this year and have to rethink their strategies around older players. Yes, it is true that the upside with a younger player is, dramatically higher than it will be with an older player, but there are exceptions to the rules. And I think where we're going to be maybe 5 to 10 years from now, when we're talking about Dalton Knecht potentially being an all-star, we're actually going to make the argument then, which I'm going to go ahead and make now, which is age shouldn't matter. It should be all about the skill set that particular player is actually bringing to that team today. Why not take a guy who scored 37 points in the Elite Eight, and yes, he's a little older, but give him a shot at actually making it? Look, there have been so many lottery busts over the years that to not take somebody like Dalton Knecht, quite frankly, just doesn't make sense. I understand the statistical reasons that these NBA teams actually had and used to justify not actually taking a Dalton Knecht. But in life, there's almost always exceptions to the rules. And in this particular case, I think this is going to be one of those exceptions to the rules that those teams are going to regret for years to come. All right. Love to know what your thoughts are on Dalton Knecht. Go ahead and drop those in for the NBA Rundown. I'm Dave DeBaugh, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.
This is Phoenix.